maybe it's just me, but I think that in most cases, an underdog team like Canada would be probably best served, or most people would think they would be best served if they played a defensive style and tried to get a nothing draw out of things. But this Canadian team is much more offensive than um, a normal Canadian side, a normal side, period. Does this cause a problem? Do they go out and try and keep the other team off the score sheet, or do they go out and try and score goals?
I
James, to
think
you.
a bit of both, really. I mean, this team they can play a possession based style, and we saw that against certain teams in qualifying, but naturally they do sit back and defend well, and then they just rely on their pace on the counter attack. So
Right.
they actually match up quite well against Croatia and Belgium, as far as tactically, because both those teams, Belgium or Croatia in particular, I guess you could say they both are quite aging. I mean, Belgium's defense and Alderweireld, Vertonghen, they're in the mid-30s, right? So you can catch them on the break with pace. And the bottom line is, against those teams, you're not going to have much of the ball, no matter what. If you try and go head-to-head with those teams, you're going to struggle. So they actually match up pretty well with those teams. And then Morocco play a similar style to Canada. They have great pace out wide, so some real quality out wide, a good player up top in Ziyech. So I don't think you're going to see this tiki-taka Canada, that's for sure. You're going to see a team that is happy to sit back and wait for its opportunity. And if it can just put a blanket over the creative forces in both Croatia and Belgium, which ain't going to be easy, they might stand a chance.
You agree, Lenarduzzi?
I would agree. Tony Waiters, when we finished up our third game in Mexico, um, we were at the press gathering, and one of the reporters, and I don't know, I can't remember where he was from, either it was Europe or South America, but he said to Tony, you came here, you had three games, you didn't score a goal, you were competitive, but why didn't you go toe to toe with these teams? Just go and play and let the just take the shackles off the players. And he said, like the Brazilians. And so Tony's response was, well, he said, if somebody can give me a magic wand and I can wave it over the top of my players and turn them into Brazilian type players with that, then I'd be happy to go toe to toe. So it's you gotta recognize what you've got and what's going to give you the best chance of success. Our team was very defensive, and I don't want to minimize the players from that group in '86, but we didn't have an Alfonso Davies, we didn't really have a Jonathan David. I mean, you look at the top four up front, the projected top, the starters up top, and you got Laren and then Buchanan. There's some weapons there. The thing that James has suggested is John pays attention to detail. And I remember a game against the Americans in Nashville where we were actually dominant. And I think we started off with a 4-4-2. We may have started off with three at the back, but whatever we did, halfway through the first half, we changed the formation, even though things were going well. And I remember thinking, well, that's a bit dodgy, but clearly they worked on it in training and understood, okay, I know exactly what I need to do now with the change in formation. So I don't think we're going to just sit back, soak up pressure, and have the odd attack. I think we're going to be able to create goal scoring opportunities. And there is nothing better for players with pace than to have space to run into. So if they're coming out and they're playing and they're feeling like they're Belgium, they're Croatia, they should be dictating the game. They should be attacking us. It's going to leave that space. And for a guy like Alfonso, that green space is heaven for him. So I don't think we need to be kitty bar the door, but we need to be very mindful of what, in particular, Belgium and Croatia, the attacking tools they have.
And I think Canada now has those players with the passing ability and range to find those green areas. Not so much in the past, but you look at the ideal starting 11 now with Stefan Eustáquio in the midfield, who's been starting in the Champions League for Porto, been just a breakthrough campaign for him. If Atiba Hutchinson can start, if he can start, it's key if he can, because he hasn't played all year. There's, I believe, a cup game at Besiktas tomorrow, I believe, which hopefully gets some minutes in. He's been out with a foot injury, but he's the leader. But aside from the leadership, he's just a wonderful passer of the ball, which allows the likes of Fonzie to find the space. So that's I think where this team is a little bit different. You're right, absolutely. We talk about David and Fonzie for the right reasons, but there's quality throughout that 11. There really is.
And James, that doesn't just one more point on that. So if I look at Sam Adekubi, he went from being a player that was struggling to get into the squad to one of the best players. The goal he scored in Hamilton, his first touch from the halfway line was unbelievable. His finish, he gets in, he gets his head up and bends it into the corner. It was like a Jonathan David would do. And then Alistair Johnson,
right?
Love him. Absolutely love him. I think that this young man, if he goes to the World Cup and he can continue to raise his game, he'll be someone that will be plucked by a club in Europe for sure. So
100%.
Attacking fullbacks are key, and clearly they'll need to pick and choose their times to get forward, because for the most part, the defensive responsibilities are first and foremost, but both of those guys can just bomb forward, have big engines, and can get back as well.
So I spent all last week in Edmonton, and I hang around the Edmonton Oilers, and I spent a lot of time with Jay Woodcroft, and who's the coach of the Oilers, and he's a student of the game, and he reads and talks to Eric Spoelstra of the NBA, and he loves listening to Sean McVay. And the other name he mentioned to me last week about how he's learning stuff from and loves his attitude is John Herdman as a coach. James, what has Herdman brought to this? What is the potential that he has created in this job?
He's brought an identity, right? Number one, and he's challenged that group to form their own identity. He's a great tactician. We know all that. He's a slave to detail. He gave each player, I think, like a 55-page dossier about each team before this World Cup to study, right? So, but a lot of coaches do that. There's a lot of hardworking coaches, but I think what he brings is that man management as well, that he gets those players playing above themselves. He did it with the women's team. He did it with New Zealand's women's team before that as well. I think he arrived in Canada or even in New Zealand with a big chip on his shoulder because he couldn't get opportunities in England, and he's got so much to prove. He's got that ruthless streak to him, which you don't see, because behind that smile, I think, is a real ruthless streak. But he's just brought that charisma with a tactical guile that this program needed. Let's be honest. There's been a number of coaches, the last few years who really failed with this, not the same group. Obviously, timing was beautiful for him, right? But he brought that real personality and identity that I think in recent years, certainly, that whole team's lacked.